Ducks fans, are you ready? You are listening to the Ducks and Pucks podcast with your hosts, Mike Walters and Eddy Jones. This is the #1 home for Anaheim Ducks talk and analysis. Here we go.
All right, welcome back to the show. We're going to get you guys all caught up on the recent news with the Ducks lately. It's been kind of the dog days of summer, Eddy, in August. It's usually a rough time of the year for hockey fans, but we've got some news on Silfverberg, Hagelin, Andersen, some arena news, and third jersey news as well. But I guess the big news is the Silfverberg signing, which a lot of people have been waiting for, Eddy, and he chips in with a 4-year deal. $15 million. It's a pretty good deal, and I'm really excited. What do you think, Eddy? Silfverberg for 4 more years.
Yeah, I'm really surprised at the term and the amount of money he's getting. In a good way that it's not over $4 million like I expected it to be. Obviously we let Bolesky go, and he ended up signing a deal that we didn't really want to sign him for to make room for Hagelin and Silfverberg, and I expected him to ask somewhere around 4 to 4.5, and the deal took longer than everybody thought it would, but it ended up being really a really good deal for the team, and still a good deal for the player too. But there's still a lot of untapped potential with Silfverberg. He could come out next year and easily get 30 goals and 60 points. So at 3.75 for the next 4 years, that's a steal for sure.
Yeah, that brings up another question too. Is a lot of people are wondering, how is it going to go next year on the second line? I still think that obviously Kessler will be on the second line, as we know. Silfverberg will be on the right wing, and it's going to be interesting, Eddy. Obviously, the Hagelin deal is not done yet. At least at the time that we're recording this, it's not done. But if you put him on that second line too, I mean, the Ducks are going to have a killer 1-2 punch. They could, like we talked about, shift it around and move Maroon off the first line, put Hagelin up there. But I don't know. It seems like Hagelin might be a really good fit for that second line.
Yeah, and it just improves on what we had last year. That Kessler, Silfverberg, Bolesky line was pretty good for most of the season, and obviously that first line with Getzlaf, Perry, and really whoever decided to slot in. I know Maroon for most of the season, but occasionally we had some other guys on that line. But to have that second line hopefully set with those 3 guys and be able to play together for the whole season, if they're lucky, and into the playoffs, that'll definitely create some chemistry, and we could see all those guys put up some big numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, having that second punch is going to be key. We talked about this too in some of the fan questions, which we have a bunch we'll get to later on in the show. But for the Ducks to go deep again, get to the Western Conference Final, or go farther and get to the Stanley Cup Final, having the second line is going to be huge. And if the Ducks have that 1-2 punch, as we all are assured that's going to pan out to be, I really think the Ducks can start off the season quick, get a good start like Boudreau wants, rest some players towards the end of the season, and then make another deep run in the postseason, Eddy.
Yeah, and it's not even just 2 lines either. They've got 4 lines that are capable of hurting you in different ways. I mean, having Sekach and on that third line, Raquel as well, and a bunch of other guys. Horkoff's there as well. Maroon could be on that line. There's a lot of guys down there that could still hurt you and put up some points. So, I mean, being able to roll 4 lines and have them all effective is a huge advantage.
And also, speaking of Hagelin, some news came out too recently. Nicholas Kronwall has he calls it the Kronwall Stars charity game, which he does in the summertime over in Sweden. And had several players there from the NHL, and Raquel and Hagelin actually appeared in this game, Eddy, and got some photos from Patrick Althorn, who helped us out with a lot of the photos, and actually a video also of a Raquel shootout attempt, which he didn't score on. But it was interesting to see, get a preview of Hagelin in a Ducks jersey, and get to play in the game. So that was kind of a good find, and it was interesting to see. And he looks good on the ice. Obviously we only saw a few photos and a little bit of the action, but just one more step before hockey comes around and preseason in September.
Yeah, and I think that's reassuring too that he has a jersey made for him. He's got his number on it, 62, which puts a little bit into the works on what number Wagner will have, but I mean, it's reassuring to see him in a Ducks jersey, and I don't think anybody thought he wouldn't sign. It took this long to sign Silfverberg, and they have to work out the right deal because of all the RFAs we have next year. So, I mean, it's pretty much done. I think there's like almost no chance that he doesn't get signed, or there's an offer sheet that gets submitted. I think it's too late for that now, and I'd really expect him to sign a deal similar to Silfverberg, if not for a little bit of extra money.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think there'll be any issue with signing him, and we'll talk a little bit more about as far as cost and term and what we think it will be. Like we said, it hasn't happened yet as we record right now. One other big question that came out of it, and I don't really have an answer. I don't know if you do on this, Eddie, but Hagelin was wearing 62, which that's the number that Wagner wears, and everybody was kind of confused. They were thinking that Hagelin would wear 26 for the season, which is what the Ducks announced. He would wear 26. So do you have any idea maybe why he wore 62 for the charity game?
I'm not really sure. I mean, I don't know where he would have got the jersey. Otherwise, I would assume it'd be from the team. You would think that he would wear the number that they submitted for him to wear. Wagner obviously is going to be wearing 62. Usually when a player comes in and they want to have a number, usually the younger guys who aren't on the full roster yet don't mind switching out. But I mean, it's a weird situation in the fact that they had stated he'll be number 26, but I mean, I'm sure it's just a jersey that he had made, and 62 is his preferred number, so he just had it on there.
Yeah, maybe he had it done before, the Ducks actually decided to switch it to 26. Once they knew that they acquired him, maybe that's what he decided to do. So, or maybe he wanted to wear it one last time, in the charity game, which he's always worn, 62. So, um, we'll see. It should be number 26 though when the season starts. If something changes, obviously we'll keep everybody up to date on that. Another little preview we got to see too that came out was Andersen. He was back home in Denmark doing a summer camp there, and we got to see his pads, Eddie. So they look pretty good. Looked like they matched the new jerseys, and nothing else really new there, but they look good.
Yeah, we got a peek of both masks obviously earlier a couple weeks ago, and now the sneak peek of his pads. I'm not sure too many people are super excited to see his pads, but there's always some people out there who are interested to see how the goalie, this equipment is going to look for the season, and how it's going to match the jerseys and the masks that they've submitted. So, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's nice to see what kind of pads he'll be wearing.
Yeah, and I think that's it, Eddie. I think everybody's just starving right now for hockey. So, any little thing that we can find out there, put out there, people are excited to see, as far as like Hagelin and Raquel playing and Anderson's pads. And then, obviously the more recent news right now that the Ducks announced, we knew the third jersey was coming, and that's the big one that you've all been waiting for. And they've announced that third jersey will be debuted at the Ducks home game on October 16th against the Colorado Avalanche. Again, nothing new as far as what the image is going to look like, Eddie. It's still in the dark. They're really trying to keep it under wraps. I am told that you can buy the jerseys that night at the game after puck drop, obviously, because they don't want to show it before. So unless someone else decides to leak it, maybe EA Sports or something, but I don't know. They might have got their freebie with the goals, Eddie.
Yeah, I'm sure it won't be released before then. Like EA's learned their lesson, and Anaheim won't really submit their third jerseys until they've been revealed. And it's gonna be worn 15 times this season, so we're gonna see it a fair amount, which is pretty nice. And I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see what it looks like. I'm sure they'll go with a combination of orange and black, or orange and white, or orange being the primary color. We've seen a lot of different variations and possibilities, but there's pretty much anywhere they could go. And there's going to be tons of rumors up until the day, and it's their jersey since 2010, 2011. So it's gonna be nice to have a little bit of a mix up between the home and away jersey.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, there's a lot of speculation about this jersey and what it's going to be. We posted up an article you can check on the blog that It goes to one of our writers. Daniel made one, a retro one. It's black and orange, predominantly orange with the Mighty Ducks logo on it. Which, I've heard different things. I know a lot of people are thinking go retro, but then I've also heard the Samuelis aren't big on anything associated to Disney. So I don't know if it's going to look like that, but that's something we threw up on there. Also, Fan Brands made the change over back in 2006 initially, and then the 2010, as you mentioned. So they had a lot of designs that they posted up on their website. We linked it on the latest article about the third jersey. You can go on there and look, and they have all kinds of Mighty Ducks. The old school logos in all kinds of colors: green, black, orange, retro colors, new colors, everything you want to look at. They've also got orange jerseys with the newer logos as well. So there's a lot of stuff on there. None of that stuff I don't know if it's anything even close. So I can't say one way or another, but it just gives you an idea that there's all kinds of stuff that's going on, and hopefully we'll get an idea. I don't know. Maybe someone will leak it, Eddie. It won't be me if it comes from the Ducks, because then they'll be really upset with me. So it won't be from me, but maybe someone else will tell us.
Yeah, you would expect it would have to come from within the organization if it got leaked out, and I highly doubt that that anything like that's gonna happen. I'm sure they've kept it between a couple people and tightly locked up until they did debut it on October 16th. So I guess we're just gonna have to wait until the players skate on the ice.
Yeah, and the only other real update that we can give you about the stadium is the the new scoreboard that's coming up, as we talked about. It's going to look kind of like the Colorado Tampa Bay scoreboards in essence, as far as the screens are going to go. You're going to have the larger screens facing the press box and the benches, and then the smaller screens facing the goals. And we put up a photo up there. I was able to get one of the actual framing. The framing went up this past week, and the framing pretty much goes with what we've been talking about. You can see it's not the best picture, but it's a rectangular in shape with the longer sides facing the benches and the press box, as we talked about, Eddie. But they're working on it. It's going to be hopefully done sometime in September. Obviously, we have the preseason games in September. Yeah, and we just got to kind of wait as I can get some more photos. I'll post them. Also, I know some of you have gone to the KISS games as well, and you've sent some photos too, so I appreciate that as well. But that's really it on that, Eddie. I don't really have too much more. It's just going to be a wait and see process before it's up and done. It's going to take some time, obviously, and some of the fans asked too whether or not there'd be an open house event, which, if you remember, the Ducks had one last year, and we got a lot of great insight and information about the Ducks. But it looks like right now they're probably not going to have that event, and it's just because of the timeline, Eddie. They're trying to get the scoreboard done, and they've got the KISS games, they got everything going on. They're just on a real rigid schedule there.
Yeah, and it's something that it's not too exciting. Like we said, the people are just starving for news in the off season, and a lot of teams around the league are updating their scoreboards right now with new technology. I know Toronto is working on a big project with their scoreboard, and I believe Columbus is another team who's working on a new scoreboard as well. And just like the jerseys or anything else with the team, a lot of teams don't like to release too much information on it, so we get as much as we can whenever it comes out.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess the only other real news to go along with the Ducks was Bobkoff ended up going to the KHL. Eddie, he's a fan favorite by a lot of people, but I think once Huberdin came over, we drafted some goalies out of the draft too. It kind of signaled the end for Bobkoff. He wasn't given, a qualifying offer, and he ended up going over to the KHL. So I kind of wish him the best, but it just didn't work out, Eddie.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people expected that with the goalie situation and having three guys who could definitely start in the NHL, he was kind of left behind. I know a lot of people still wanted to see him get his chance, but I mean, there's no way he was gonna get his chance above Andersen, Hudobin, and Gibson. So I mean, he goes back home to Russia, which is good for him, and hopefully he'll end up maybe one day making his way back into the NHL.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that's the best you can hope for him, and the writing was kind of on the wall, as we said. Obviously with some of the other prospects too that weren't given qualifying offers. And just so you know, Thomas has been doing a lot of articles, one of our writers, on all the prospects. So you can go on our website and check it out. He's been trying to keep everything up to date on that. And we also have Phil, who runs the Ducks prospects account on Twitter. He's also joined us as well too, and he may be writing some articles too. But he has a lot of good updates from the KHL, AHL, OHL, everything besides NHL, basically. He does a really good job, so you can watch for all those. Um, as far as the league goes, in terms of news out there, you mentioned some of the newer scoreboards, Eddie. What about the expansion news? You know, some people want to know about Quebec and Las Vegas. What's going on? What's the status with those two cities?
Uh, Recently, as of August 5th, they both have been invited to the second phase of the NHL expansion process, which, as they explained it, they'll feature bidders providing the NHL additional information regarding their respective markets and arena plans, and the bidders will also gain access to certain league-related information. So it's just another step towards the process. It looks like these are the two teams that the NHL are going to go with. No, there was no other teams that submitted bids other than Quebec City and Las Vegas, and these are the only two teams that have actually moved on into the second phase. So, if in the near future the two teams are going to come into the NHL, well, through the way of expansion, maybe another team could be introduced. But if a team ends up moving, as maybe the Arizona Coyotes or another team, but Quebec City and Las Vegas are definitely the two that are going to be the new teams in the NHL.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting too because I mean, you figure Las Vegas would go to the west, but Quebec would probably go to the east, Eddie, and maybe someone would have to come to the west. I mean, I don't know. How would that work out?
Well, you would have to say Las Vegas would go to the west. I mean, Phoenix is in the west, all the California teams in the west. It's on, it's in Nevada. That it has to be in the west, and Quebec City would be in the same area as Montreal, so that has to be in the east. And there's already Bettman's come out and he already says that he's not too worried about how the how it's set up and having an uneven amount of teams. I know there's 16 and 14 right now, and putting this in there would make it 17 and 15, which it makes it a little bit awkward for the process. But the fact that they now have the wild card and the way it's set up, it doesn't make it too complicated. The wild card teams, it wouldn't change any of that situation. The playoffs would still have 16 teams. There'd just be two more teams that don't make the playoffs. But I mean, ideally, you would like to have the same amount of teams on an even number in each conference, but the way it's set up right now with these two teams coming to the league, it doesn't look like that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's why I'm wondering if they will indeed try to switch somebody. But it's going to be kind of interesting because obviously Detroit bounced over. I don't think they'd want to bounce back to the West. I don't know. It's going to be kind of interesting to see how they figure that all out. Unless they do another restructuring of the divisions or whatnot, which God help us, I hope they don't. Just leave it alone. I mean, we've done this so many times now, just to keep it the way it is. Um, but yeah, we'll look for that. We'll keep track of the expansion and see how it's going. I know a lot of people that live around here in California are going to be excited about the Vegas team because now you can go to San Jose, you can go to LA, and then you can go to Arizona, and now hopefully in the future Vegas. So there's a lot of games that you can go to and either take a short flight or a road trip, and it's going to be good. It's going to help add to the league, Eddie. It'd be interesting. I'm still curious to see what the name of the team is going to be in Vegas. I mean, there's so many things you can go with.
Yeah, it looks like they're voting on it too, and I know I heard the Aces, the Black Knights, the Miners, the Bandits are still out there. I'm sure they'll put it to a vote, and the fans will vote on it. I mean, the last time I checked, I believe there was a poll on Twitter, and the Aces were leading, and the Black Knights were second. And I really don't like the name of the Black Knights. I mean, if you're just gonna go with Knights, that wouldn't be too bad, but I mean, the Aces would make sense in Las Vegas, and I think that would be a pretty decent name for the team.
Yeah, but then what would we do with the Black Aces then? Would we have to change that name for the our prospects in the playoffs then, or what? No, I mean it probably wouldn't be a big deal. But I think the Aces. You're right. I just think it'd be funny. Maybe you got the Red Aces. I mean, who knows? But yeah, there's a few names that they could come up with, and I'm sure it'll be fine with whatever they come up with. And like we said, we'll keep you up to date on all that. The only other league news that came out, which this was kind of a surprise, Eddie. Jared Stoll found a home. It's not Las Vegas, where he got in trouble, but he ended up going to the New York Rangers for 1 year. So, what do you think about this news?
To be honest, I'm surprised anybody gave him a contract. He still is a pretty a pretty good player. He can play third line center role for most teams, and I'm sure he'll do that with the Rangers. And I think they're just recognizing that he made a mistake and giving him another chance. But I mean, it's not like it's a small mistake. He was caught with cocaine. I'm just surprised that really any other team was willing to give him a chance, and the amount of media it's gonna generate in New York. I mean, they're not strangers to media, but I mean, it's kind of, do you really want that guy in your locker room? I mean, he is a champion, and he's been with the LA Kings, and he's won Stanley Cups, but I mean, it's a lot of drama to bring into your locker room with those young players around.
Yeah, I agree. That's going to be the key is the chemistry in the locker room. And those of you that remember Danny, we had her on our podcast before. She lives out by the where the Admirals used to be, and she also is a big New York Rangers fan. I asked her today about what she thought, and she said, "Well, that's our charity player for the year." So you can see how much she's kind of surprised too, and doesn't really understand the move. And I think I'm the same way. I mean, I guess you give a guy a chance, you do a 1 year contract, but it'll be interesting. And, so, some kind of, not to go on the become a Kings podcast, but, Richards too, the NHL's trying to fight it out for him too, Eddie. And that's going to be an interesting situation to see, how the Kings are going to come out of that scenario.
Yeah, there's a lot of drama this offseason with the Kings with Stoll and Mike Richards, and I'm sure they're not short of any more drama coming up. Obviously, Lucic signing there, and Mike Richards still hasn't found a home, but the LA Kings are never short of drama, and then they never will be, especially when you're in Los Angeles. So I'm not surprised. But I mean, other than that, there wasn't really much news in NHL. It's in the summer. There's pretty much a dry spot. ESPN came out with an article recently, about 4 days ago, with something that we've talked about on the podcast before when they were inducting Pronger and Fedorov into the Hall of Fame. There was a debate about if Paul Kariya would be suitable to go into the Hall of Fame, and their result was 73% voted to actually have him in the Hockey Hall of Fame, which was actually a little bit surprising. I know we said that he should be there and that his number should be raised, but I'm surprised a lot of other people share our opinion.
Yeah, I know. We did talk about that. We actually wrote about it too a little while back. I think you wrote about it actually a little while back, and we get some mixed reaction from some of the Ducks fans, obviously because the way it ended when he left and whatnot, and we know there's a little bit of things going on there with the Ducks management back then, which is completely different, obviously, than what we have now. So. I think he should. I don't see why he shouldn't be in there, and I'm glad to see the higher percentage. And if it's done, then good for him, It'll be interesting. The big question still will be whether or not something's done at Honda Center. But, that's the thing. I don't know with the way that the relationship has still been kind of iffy. So I don't know, Eddie. That's the thing. Hockey Hall of Fame, I would say yes. Anything at the Honda Center, I would say I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, and they also make a case as they have a quote in here that says no player has meant more to the Anaheim Ducks franchise than Paul Kariya, which is a bold statement, obviously with Solani being part of the franchise for so long, and they do make a pretty good case, and it's hard to really separate Solani and Kariya, especially with his career ending so short because of the concussions that he suffered and having to retire early. It's hard to compare these guys and say one has had more of an impact than the other on the franchise.
Yeah, that actually sounds like a really good article and poll question, Eddie. That sounds like something that we should, put together and let the fans decide, But that's a tough call. I mean, I don't know. Separating Temu and Korea, that's a really tough debate to say which one means more. I mean, it's hard because Korea was there obviously before Solani, didn't win a Stanley Cup, short one game. And then with Solani there, they did win one, and they went pretty far. A couple other different seasons too. So that's a tough one. I would I'd claim what Switzerland and be in the middle and say both. That's the way I
Yeah,
would go
you'd
with it.
have to say they both had an even
Yeah.
impact. I mean, there's still a lot of people out there, and me included, that that love Paul Creed. He was my favorite player when I was growing up, and I mean he did so much for the Ducks and didn't win a Stanley Cup, and that's the criticism between they never really advanced past the second round. Only in the 2003 playoffs was the only time they actually got past the second round, and obviously getting one game away. But I mean, it's hard to base a player's success, even an impactful player, and especially a captain and Paul Kariya on winning a Stanley Cup, and just like it's hard to judge a coach's success like Boudreau on going past the second round. It takes a whole team effort. It's all players on the team, coach, not just one guy. So it's hard to say which guys had a more of an impact, and it'd be interested to see how it would vote him, but I'm sure with the amount of people who still hostile to Paul Kariya, would have to go Solani's way in a vote.
Yeah, that's probably the way it would go, Eddie. I would think. I mean, we may do that. We may do a poll question and do a article and present both sides and see, and maybe even give an option saying one or the other or both, and see how it comes out. That'd be actually a really good topic to see what the fans go for. And speaking of the fans, we like to always answer questions for those of you that listen and follow on the website as well. And we appreciate all your support. And we've got some more questions this week. We had one from Adam. He talks about the status of the team now, Eddie, and he thinks how the team is right now. Will it duplicate last year's success, or will it go farther? And what do you think with the way the team is made up now?
I definitely think they can go farther. I think they improved on the team than how it was set up last year. But so did a lot of other teams, especially in the Western Conference. Dallas has improved. I think everybody expects Colorado to have a better season. San Jose looks to have gotten a little bit better. The Kings are always going to be a strong team. Chicago, even though losing a couple players, they're still going to be strong. I mean, it's going to be hard to compete with these teams, but to say we can go farther, I mean, it's hard to go much farther. You obviously did the Stanley Cup Finals and winning the cup are the only two steps we have to make. So I think we have what it takes, but to say, will we make it that far? I mean, we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, really, the only step farther is winning one more game. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really it. I mean, we won the first two rounds. We got so close at the end there. We almost got that 12th win to get to the Stanley Cup Finals. So, in terms of whether or not that this team can, I think this team is better than last year's team. But like you said, we're going to have to wait and see. I think a lot of it's going to come down to obviously injuries. Though that always is a factor every year. We've seen it not just on our team, but other teams. I mean, last year was really for the way the Ducks did and all the injuries they had, they did phenomenal last year. But we're going to have to see how that goes. And there's other factors that are related to this, and that other fans have asked about. And we're going to answer those too that are going to factor into how the Ducks are going to do, which we'll get to in just a minute. Adam had another question too. He asked about Hagelin and his contract, and whether or not we thought that as far as the cost and the terms of the contract would be more or less or the same as Silfverberg's contract. So what do you think, Eddie, in comparing Silfverberg's now signed deal to? Obviously, we don't know Hagelin's at the time that we're recording this, but what do you think?
I would assume it would have to be close. I don't think it's going to be less than Silfverberg's deal. I mean, at the very least, it would be the same. But I would expect him and his agent would demand a little bit more, somewhere in the region of 4 to 4.5 at the most. I feel like I don't want to say he's a better player than Silfverberg, but I feel like he's proven his caliber in a more consistent way over the years that he's been in NHL with the Rangers, more than Silfverberg has with Ottawa and the Ducks. So I think he warrants a little bit more money for now, but definitely not anything over 4.5. So I would expect him to get around similar term, probably 3 or 4 years at around 4 to 4.5.
Yeah, that's what's going to be interesting. I disagree a little bit on the cost. I mean, I do agree with you. I think he's more a consistent player and has shown that no doubt over Silverberg for sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if he was maybe 3.5 or 3.7 or somewhere in there. I'm not saying that he deserves that, but I wouldn't be surprised just with the way the cap situation is now. Right now if they sign him for 3.5 to 4, that would put the Ducks around 8 or 9 still in the cap space, which is Murray's sweet spot, as I called it. So he could get upward to 4.5, like you said, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a little bit less. I mean, he didn't make over 3 million with the Rangers, Eddie. So that's the one thing that I'm kind of wondering. But like you said, he's obviously averaged a lot, better on the goals and assists.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't be surprised to see him get less, but you also have to remember that Stewart will come off the books next year, Horkoff will come off the books, Hudobin will come off the books. So there's a lot of cap space that frees up at the end of next season to make way for new contracts for these players. I'm sure Hudobin most likely won't get re-signed. I know we talked about this. I'm sure it'll be Andersen and Gibson next season. Stewart, I believe it all depends on how well he plays, and obviously if he plays better, he's going to want more money. So seeing him come back would be something I'd be surprised to see. And then Horkoff as well, he would probably expect the same amount of money that he has now, depending on his season. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him get less, but I also wouldn't be surprised to see him get a little bit more either. I think the range has to be within 3.5 to 4.5.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's got to be pretty close. When you bring up the goalie situation, which we had another question, we get a lot of questions about the goalies. We had Leafa Matic on Twitter ask us, what do we think about the goalie situation this year? Who's going to be the starter? Is it going to be Andersen as the main starter? And we talked about this, Eddie. I pretty much think it's going to be Andersen. I mean, I know that we saw the Murray interview. We put it up on our YouTube channel. If you haven't checked it out yet, we've also talked about it before, and I have another article coming out talking about it more in depth as well later this week. But I still think Freddie's the guy. You all know I'm the Gibson fan, but I don't dislike Andersen either. But I think he's going to be number one. Hudobin's going to be the backup, and Gibson will be in San Diego. Obviously barring any injuries, Eddie.
Yeah, and you would have to think that Andersen would start game one of the season. Hudobin's the new boy. I'd be very surprised to see him pip Andersen for the starting role on day one. I mean, I could definitely see him putting together some good performances and maybe taking the job from Andersen if he's struggling during the season, but definitely not in the first game. And like we said before, Gibson, the way his contract is set up, he's able to go down and play for San Diego, so that's where we expect him to play at the beginning of the season. So, to really answer the question, you would have to think that Andersen would be the starter day one.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think there's going to be any change. I think it's going to be Freddie, and he's going to be the one for the beginning, like you said. Another question we had was from Roger. He asked, what's the X factor that's missing from the team, and if there's any pieces that you'd be willing to move for a missing, player or X factor. Is there an X factor you think that the Ducks are missing, Eddie, out there right now?
I think they're missing a proven top line left winger. Somebody who could definitely slot in with Getzlaf and Perry and play there the whole year. And I think they are also missing I think a legitimate top two defenseman or a top four physical defenseman. I mean, we signed Bieksa, which is good, but I mean, I think we're missing that guy, like that Seabrook type of player or that top two. That I believe Lindholm can become that top two guy, but I think we're missing that guy and the top line left winger. But those are two things that are really hard to get other than drafting a player. We all hope Richie could be that. Shea Theodore has the potential to be the other side of that, but I mean, I don't think there's anything I'd be willing to give up, or if any team would be willing to give up those types of guys. I mean, most teams are looking to give away their top line wingers, and definitely teams are looking to give away their top two defensemen. So I think getting those guys would be hard, but those are definitely two things that the Ducks could use.
Yeah, I think that's really going to be the issue. I think on the top left wing, it's really going to come down, and we kind of beat this to a dead horse before, but it's really what the Ducks want to do on that top line. Do they want a big body like Maroon, or do they want a speedster like Sekatch or Hagelin? So I think, the Ducks are going to have to figure that out. And if they can figure that out early, then I think they'll be okay. In terms of defense, I think it's a little bit more necessary because, like you said, Eddie, finding a top four or top two defenseman is going to be, difficult. But I think that's something that the Ducks are going to have to figure out, especially going into the free agency. We saw Murray talk about this and say how the defense is going to be hard. He wants to build out from the defense going forward. So to me, something's gonna have to give. You got a big contract with Stoner. You got three RFAs coming out. Lindholm, Dupree, and Vatanen. So they're gonna have to figure that out, because if they don't trade Stoner to get rid of that big contract and go get somebody else or something, I don't see them being able to re-sign all those three players, and that's kind of what is the issue that Murray's talked about. So I don't know if they're going to be able to get one, or like you said, Theodore comes up, takes off. Manson comes up, takes off. I mean, those are the two front runners right now, really, for the Ducks defense. We talked about Manson getting his extension, but it's going to be tough. I think that if they were able to get somebody prior to the trade deadline, it would have to be something like trading a Stoner and a draft pick or something like that. I think that's the only way, because, like you said, Eddie, trying to move anybody on the current Ducks roster, other than another forward for a forward or defenseman for a defenseman, it's going to be very difficult.
Yeah, if you trade anybody right now, you open up holes. If you fill one hole, you open up another hole. And if you move anybody, if you go out to acquire those X factors we said that the Ducks could use, and I'm sure any team could really use a top line winger or a top two defenseman. But if any of those guys become available, their contracts aren't going to be cheap, and the trade value for those guys aren't going to be cheap. And I mean, you're going to have to move Stoner just for the fact that his contract is over 3 million, and you'll have to add another contract in that because, top line left winger probably coming with a $6 million price tag, if not higher. Same with the top, two defensemen. You in top four defensemen, you're still looking at over 5 million. So if you're gonna move for one of those guys that they become available, you're gonna have to move at least the same amount of cap space back if they're gonna want to sign guys at the end of next season.
Yeah, and the only other option really would go back to the goalie situation, Eddie. Andersen and Gibson are going to be up at this summertime too. So, that's the only other thing I could see, is if one of them really takes off and they go with them, that maybe they trade one of them at the trade deadline for that top defenseman or forward. I mean, that's kind of what I would lean towards if they were really going to try and make a move, because I just don't really see the Ducks keeping Gibson and Andersen long term, because they're both goalies that can be this number one starter on any NHL team, really.
Yeah, and I'm sure eventually, if not this year, next year, the year after that, I'm sure sometime in the future we're gonna see one of them get dealt. I don't think they'd want to let them walk or um, get a potential offer sheet in the off season next year. So I mean, we could see one go as early as next season, even though I highly doubt it. I think they'd like to get both re-signed and give them a run at each other during the next season after this one, and really decide who they think is their number one goalie going forward.
Yeah, I agree. It's just going to be interesting. We're going to have to monitor it. I mean, we're obviously getting a little ahead of ourselves, but the questions come up, and we're trying to give you the best answer now. But as the trade deadline approaches, as the players perform and how they go, that's basically what we'll be able to go by and give you, more concrete answers. The only other last question we had, which was actually from one of our own writers, Phil. He asked about our Temu jersey that we posted up today. We kind of did a spoof on a Temu jersey. Greg Beecham and Eric Stevens asked about the Ducks' new third jersey, and it would look great to have a Temu face on it. So Phil created one. He threw on Temu's face on there, and then we made a second version for Dan Wood, who wanted some a ketchup logo we talked about, and one hand, which is a little inside joke. With Temu, the way he talks about, when you talk about saying something's on the other hand, he said the same hand. So that's kind of what that's referencing to. But we came up with those, and people liked it, Eddie. Obviously cracking up over the Solani jersey. It's just a joke. Some people thought it was serious, but no, we were just really joking. So it's not the third jersey, but it's out there if you want to check it. We posted it on Facebook and on Twitter, but. I don't know, Eddie. Maybe one day we'll just make up one just for the hell of it. I mean, I don't know. Some people said they would buy it.
Yeah, put Timu's face on a jersey. I'm sure everybody would crack seeing that at an actual game. And I don't know. I saw the concept that Phil put out there. You can add that along with the other concepts for the third jerseys you want. Some of them get pretty crazy.
Yeah, and like we said, there's a lot of them out there. There's links up on our website you can check out, and the website's coming along. It should be done pretty soon. You guys are gonna like it. It's gonna look a lot better, more streamlined, one place to get all the information. So it's gonna make it a lot easier for you. We're also giving away the shirts like we've been doing on Facebook, facebook.com/DucksNPucks blog. You go on there. We've been giving away either duck shirts or shirts of our own. So make sure you check those out as well. And we'll be back again, hopefully next week with some more info. Hopefully by that time Hagelin will be signed, or have another picture of the scoreboard, or another goalie mask or something, Eddie, to show the fans.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully there's something. I mean, Hagelin would be the big news, but I mean, hopefully some stuff comes out. Maybe the third jersey leaks, and we got a whole 20 minutes to talk about that. I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. There's still a week to go before any news can come out.
All right, and thanks for listening. See you next time.